So I think it's quite apparent that a lot of 3D artists struggle with the composition and gaffing of their 3D scenes. And this tutorial was initially supposed to be a camera movements tutorial, but I thought that was maybe a little bit plain for the things that I wanted to go over. To go way back, I got into this doing motion graphics and intros for people's channels. So if I know about anything in this software, it is how to move a camera. So as you'll notice, I've got front cameras, back cameras, and I've got some distant cameras. I've got some motion cameras which I haven't really set up purposefully because I'm going to do that here. So we have the main shot here. I have a close-up version. Now what these are is the reason all these cameras are there. This is kind of how I lay out my scenes as well, if I'm thinking, because I am going to animate this scene. And this is kind of how I lay it out. So I've got all my cameras with every potential camera angle that I like the thought of. Then I'm going to create a different group, duplicate those cameras and animate them. So then I still have the freeze frames, or what you would call maybe the mood board of those cameras. Once I animate them all here, I will render the animatics, place them all in the video editing software, see how it's going to look, see what I like and don't like. You don't want to just render out your camera angles, like what they might look like, how they might flow against the music, the sound effects, because then you'll spend 12 hours rendering it out and you'll come to find that you don't like it. So I have the main shot here, and then I have a close version of that shot. Now the reason for that is because I might be doing a zoom out from the close and then a cut to this. And then I have a left side of the car, and then I have a right side of the car. As I've been looking over the scene the past few days, I find the left camera here a bit redundant because of this shot. It's kind of a lot of the same information. If you did put both those in, they would have to be very far apart. You'd be better going from this to this. I'm going to show you how to get the camera movements nice and smooth as well, but you need to look at it from a cinematographer's point of view. 3D artists, we're often jack of all trades, we can often do a bit of everything, and that's not to our own discovery, I guess. You just end up doing a lot of the same things. I also use huge lenses, 75, 75, 120, 120, there's a 300 in here somewhere. I know there is. There you go. I don't like wide lenses. I don't like them in real life. I think like the lowest I'll shoot in real life is like 75. The lens I've got is 50 to 75 right now. But the right side here, I like this a lot. I usually use quite thin focal lengths. You can use the trick of setting the aspect ratio to 2 and the edge to 3. That will give it a really realistic. I try not to use it too much. It's probably even a bit too high on bigger objects, because if you go too high when you're quite far away from the object, you're gonna kind of make it look like a miniature, and that just won't work. This distance is okay to get a bit. Where it would work is if I turned the camera here, you got a view down there, the stuff that's more further away. That's when it would work. I'm actually going to leave the camera there, that looks nice. And then for that, 2, 3, if you don't know that trick, it's tab to switch down. You can just start jumping around everything there. So that looks okay. And then if we go into the front cameras, we've got the front main, which was probably the thumbnail here. And then we have the front right. Again, probably I haven't spent too much time on these cameras, probably a bit too much depth of field, maybe want to see a bit more of the right side of the car there. And then we have the front left, that's the 300 I think, yeah, so that's really far away. Again, I have went a bit crazy with the aperture. And then we've got the front, which I actually like because it's dipping below the floor, so we're getting a nice kind of cut off here. And we're being forced to look at there. I always try to imagine what these are going to look like with all the black bars as well, because I think black bars make everything look better, but I know I do quite deep black bars that come down here, and I always try to compensate for that. There's been a lot of times I've considered putting black tape over the picture view here, and if you don't work with your picture viewer locked, please do it, because you're not really going to be able to gauge how it's going to look without that. And then we have a shot of the front wheel here, which I like as well. Now onto my 2 favourite shots of the entire thing. I was going to go over something then, but I'll wait until we switch camera angles to do it. So we have this distance shot here, sorry, this one. And one thing I want to talk about is it's very easy, especially if you're new to setting up cameras. Now, by the way, just because I'm using Octane here doesn't mean you need Octane. You can do whatever you want, whether it's default Cinema 4D or Redshift, anything. None of it matters here. This is about looking through the lens. And one thing that's very easy to do is to center your subject matter all the time. And I feel like that's a pretty unhealthy habit. Offsetting your subject matter is a very, very powerful thing to do, especially when you add this amount of negative area. I've got a slight light source here, lifting up some of the floor, and then the same here as well. Now you can see the floor actually ends here, and I like that. I don't want the floor coming all the way out here, because then if I do that, your focus immediately goes onto the floor more, and the car immediately doesn't feel like it's holding that space that it just was. And I don't like that, which is why I like just kind of this sleek line. And if you couldn't see this viewer here, you wouldn't know that that's the floor ending. Now, my goal here is to actually spin the HDRI around the car or the lights. So if I was to spin the HDRI, I'd grab the X and I'd start moving it like this. And I do it very slowly. And you kind of see that in some car visionaries and adverts. And with this angle, is to do the same thing. A very, very slow movement in the camera. Very slow. I think knowing when to push your camera through Z space and through X is very useful as well. You want to know when you're going to be approaching the subject and when you're going to be coming away from it. Now what I'm going to do is start setting up some of the cameras, because I've been talking a lot. So the first camera I've set up is this. Now my main go-to technique is a circle. You would use a line to spline tag, you stick the camera to it, then you use a target, and you spin the camera on that. If you want to get further away, you increase the radius of the circle. That's how I've been doing most of my camera movements for a long time. If you do that properly, you can actually get away without even going near the curve editor. I still do that now, but if you set your keyframes right with that, you can do some really cool. So this camera angle was an adjustment on the front one. Now, because this would be a body shot and not the starting shot or anything near it, the camera keyframes are linear. So it starts at the same speed, goes through the same speed. Okay, so I just closed the viewer so you can see it a bit more cleanly. You can see how linear that is. I also have a bit of rotation on the camera, so you can see it's kind of spinning there. Now, after I animated this, I kind of realized I would want another shot of this angle, kind of panning away in a final reveal of the car. So I kind of ended up not so happy with this. So what I'll do is I will delete this. Well, I'll duplicate it. I'll call it front main 2. Now what I would suggest if you're practicing the camera angles is to just kind of grab a sphere or grab some sort of subject matter and start moving the camera around it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come to frame 0 and I'm going to reset. Oh, don't want to do that. I'm going to go to animation and delete track. Animation, delete track, animation, delete track. Now we've got no keyframes here. I usually like shots to be around 3 seconds. So what I would do there is set a keyframe there, then kind of just move back in the Z space a bit, come back here, rotate that so it's maybe about 5 degrees, then about 9 degrees, then go into your F curve, press H, make them all visible, and make sure they're all linear. Yep. And then, so that would kind of maybe be after one of, if we go to maybe front right, kind of after one of these panning shots around the front of the car, you just kind of snap to that shot like this. I know I'm running over these quite fast, but I'm just trying not to waste time. If I drop a circle in the scene here, I'm going to duplicate this camera again and bring it up here, grab a line to spline tag, bump it on the circle, jump in the camera, increase the radius of the circle, change the rotation a bit here, just like that, and then we can, oh, don't move, we can move around the car, just like that. So if you want to know how to get around things in circles, there's an easy enough way to do it. Now, the way I would usually approach this, let's say I want a shot of the back of the car here, like the shot that I had before, and we're still using that same target. I kind of like to use the same target, but we might want to use something different. Yeah, I'll use a different target. So what you would do is maybe just group all these, call it back shot, and then that target is set specifically for that shot. Now, the shot I kind of want here, so maybe let's go for one of the wheel. Let's go for one of the wheel. So we'll come in here. We'll maybe start up here above the car. Oh, the rotation's still on the keyframe there. I'll handle that in a minute. Now we'll go for 3 seconds again. I have got the scene in 24 frames per second. I find it much more cinematic. We'll whip around here like that. We'll make the target come with us. And we'll kind of just lower the circle as well. And then add more rotation. And then you can see that's not linear. So what we want to do is come into our F curve. I'm going to call this back shot. Go back into the F curve. Make everything linear. Cool. Now you can see that because we've made that linear, not the circle, it looks a little bit weird. So just want to make sure the Y here is linear. And that's all linear. And then we'll make sure the target is linear too. And then once we're done with all that, we can maybe start adding a little bit of curve to some of these. So that's all linear now. You can see that lands really nicely as well. I would maybe even just curve that around a bit more. Now one thing you can do, which makes things a bit cooler, is we could start out at about 90 here, control, come in here, and have a nice pan here as well. And then that will add a pretty nice cinematic value. In one of my old intros, I did that, and I did this kind of fast zoom on the focal length and cut it at the same time. And I've always kind of yearned for that effect again. I've never had the chance to do it, or just the thought of doing it again. But it was a really, really nice effect, and it was really quick. I'll probably have a clip of it on right now. So if you could emulate that, you know, and if you extend that out, you're going to get an even nicer look there. That looks a bit strange though, because I extended that out and not all the others. One thing, if you go up here to settings, and you can change your frame rate to 24 here, and then that will mean it will render in 24, but you won't build the scene to 24. So if you're ever going to change your frame rate, remember to go to Edit, Project Settings, and make sure it's 24 here as well. Because if it's not, you're going to come across some issues when you start rendering. So when I show the wheel here, so we'll see how this looks with the live viewer. It is good to view it with the live viewer, because I will show you some nice focal length shots that we can do with the aperture as well. And of course, it's the reason why. What I'll actually do is I'll show you it now on this camera angle. So if I hit the focus thing here and we focus on the back of the car, right? And then we hit control on the focal depth. And then 472, the final frame, we hit focus here. Oh. Just gonna fuck that a bit. Yep, there we go. And then now as we move, the focus will be changing. Cool. Now, after viewing it there, you kind of get a better gauge for the shot of how it's going to look. After watching it, again, I know I want to turn it a bit more. Get a better view of the wheel, bring the target in here more. There might be an odd snap here because I didn't do that on frame 72 yet. One thing I think that is quite handy to know, and a friend showed me this a while ago when I was doing a Tron animation, is make sure your camera's cutting away before the motion stops. That's why linear is useful, because the motion is essentially not going to stop. If you're not doing linear, your motions aren't going to cut clean. Now, one thing that I would change into curve tags in this instance is maybe the rotation. So of the camera here, make sure it's not doing any of the others, just this one, right? Now would maybe have the end linear, which you can do just by adjusting that well enough, but have kind of this quick, snappy lift off. So in the rotation, it kind of, I'll do it the other way, sorry, like that, and then comes down soft. So, oh yeah, so you're gonna hear my sound effects now. I apologize about this, but if you've ever animated anything with a camera before, you will make sound effects. So then that rotation kind of, yeah. See that nice turn at the end. Then it's like, whoa, oh no, that's the target doing that right there. So I want more. Nice. That's way too much, but maybe like that much. And then the more rotation you get there, you can. Oh, it's reset me. You're nice. Probably too quick, but maybe. There you go. That's nice. Now, how I would animate those really slow distance shots. So if I grab this one here with all the blank space, now you can't really have a target in a shot like this, because if I do put a target down, I'm just going to snap to the car, and I don't really want to try and find the point here that I'm looking at. So I'm probably going to keep the camera free, or better yet, maybe use a motion camera. Now, if you've not used the motion camera, they're a bit of fun. You can't move them around with these settings. You have to move them with the parallax setting here. If you come out, you can see that there's a wee guy holding them here, holding the camera. Now, usually I would use this with just S_shake in After Effects. But what we'll do is if we bring them down here, bring them out, bring them up, bring them out more. We're just gonna get him in line with that camera, just this one. Move him. Which one's the... Okay, yeah, it's this one. Right. And then move the camera all the way around till it clicks there. And then shots kind of matched. That's why it's good to have that template there. Now if we hit play, it's going to be all shaky. It's going to be like somebody real's holding the camera. Now if you bring these down to maybe about 2 or 3%, you kind of get a nice realistic shake to the camera. And the annoying thing is you can't add this on to a normal camera. I really wish you could just tack it on and have this kind of like head bob, and you can't, and it's so irritating. So I think about 2 or 3% is enough. There's a few more dynamics here, but there's really not much point in getting into them. And then maybe what I would do is I'd maybe do about a 5-second long shot here. Maybe come to about 5 seconds. And I want this initial place to be where we're aiming for, and maybe come into blank space a bit more, come back a bit, and maybe rotate a bit from the start, and then have a really nice slow movement there. Now what we'll do is we'll come in and make sure that all the splines are okay. I don't know how much you want a shot like this to be linear, because if it's linear it's not going to look realistic. A shot like this, you can't film linear in real life. You can't just move at the same speed the whole time. You could on a crane or a rig of some sort, but this guy's got a camera over his shoulder. He is going to move ever so slightly like this. And if that's the camera shots you're going for, you're going to want to do that on all of them. If you don't want to go through the process of lining it up and doing it again, use a plugin called S_shake in After Effects or Sony Vegas. I will put it on the screen right now what it does to it. You've got to be careful because of course it has no Z-space around what's outside of the composition, so you might get some mirroring on the sides if you do it too much, but it does, you can sell it, so maybe you just want to do that. But if not, there is a much nicer way of doing it here. I think it's nicer at least. It's not so crazy and unpredictable. Now I would maybe just bring the rotation up a bit here, just so you can't see that. 5. Just so you can, I know I went on a bit at the bottom of the floor earlier, but I don't exactly want to see. A black bar will cover it there, so you can maybe see that's enough. Now for the lighting here, I spoke earlier about switching lighting for different shots. For the most part, the lighting's been quite universal in this scene. For this scene in particular, I have a really low gamma and exposure. I don't want you to think it's the lighting doing this. It's not. If I turn this off, the scene's going to look a bit uglier. It's not like that in all the camera angles, but in this one particularly, because I wanted it to be kind of one of the fourth shots of the animation, where you're just kind of getting started with the car, you're looking at it, there's maybe only a couple lights on, highlighting the car, maybe the roof light as well, maybe just those 3 lights. And I would probably do that with passes and turn them on and off there, because then I could actually use the brake lights as well. And then I wanted to do that again with this shot, and I purposefully had this one out of focus, and I wasn't going to bring it in focus, but I again was going to get the dolly and kind of, the motion camera tag, and kind of just do a panning into this rotation stance here over the course of about 3, 4, 5 seconds, with all the lights turning on, and then have the camera start bumping around all these different places. Now, I have been rambling on a while, so I might leave this tutorial here. But I do kind of want to expand on this. If you do struggle with cinematic scenes and understanding how to build that, I'm going to try and make a few more tutorials on that. Most of my lighting in this scene is gauged from Andrei Librov's tutorial on unbiased lighting. So if you want to understand that, there's a good tutorial there. A good technique is a HDRI, bring the power of it down, and then use a couple lights, maybe 2 or 3. But your lighting, your texturing, and the way your scene moves are the 3 fundamental things in making it look cinematic. I do work with grades and LUTs on. I do not wait to expose and correct my images. I don't think that's a good thing to do. I think it's best to work under the same hat and then maybe make any changes later. Next week, I'm maybe going to try and go over universal materials, because I don't think there's many tutorials on that, and they add a whole new world to Octane texturing, in my opinion. So we might just go over some of those in the car texture here as well. But if you want this scene, you can go get this scene. I had a lot of fun making this. Without any further ado, all my links are in the description. They're all on my channel, Instagram, Facebook, website, all of it. Go check out my selfie, check out my assets. Thanks for watching this week's tutorial, and I'll see you in the next one.